Welcome to the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and today we will be continuing this post-combine series as we get revved up for the NFL Draft. You can find this chart right here up at the website, www.theffforge.com. You can find it to view it as is, or you could download it if you wish to do your own kind of scouting or adjust these columns in any which way based on what your preferences are that you want to see. As far as the color scale goes over here, it's pretty obvious, and here's the mathematics behind that. So anything that's colored blue puts them in the excellent category or a top 8 percentile based on data from the 2022 combine and this season's combine. Over here is a size adjusted or prospect score based on their mass, so based on their pounds divided by their height in inches. Especially at this position, it's a grain of salt over here. I wouldn't worry about that. We're not going to go over there, so I'm not even going to explain that at all in this episode. It's just the athletics going through this lens here, but you can see that explained a little bit more in some of the other episodes. In this episode, we were looking at the wide receivers, so maybe that makes sense why we don't care so much about their mass, even though it does yield some interesting results at least. But we will be looking at the top 5 prospects. Actually, it's more like the top 4 plus several more prospects that I find intriguing. This doesn't mean that they are the best prospects, nor does the order that I end up talking about them in truly matter. Last year, I did the same process, and I came up with a lot of interesting names at each position. Not all of them always succeeded, but last year, I also didn't know a darn thing about the prospects coming into this. This is the first thing I did to get myself familiar with the draft class. This year, I do know much more about this season's draft class coming into it. However, I am trying to go into it pretty empty-minded and open to what these guys' potential could be at the next level. Players that did interest me are, to give some credence to this process, were Christian Watson, and Christian Watson. This is the time of the year for me to be celebrating these guys and what their potential is. So I'm not looking to be knocking anybody down. Of course, we have to be realistic, and some negative things may come up. But overall, we're trying to be positive here. Whether those guys are going to be first-round prospects or undrafted free agents, I love them all the same, and they're all going to get a shot then at a career in the NFL. So let's see what they could potentially become. This is just based on these physical and athletic traits. That leaves a lot of blind spots for other things. Just because somebody's a great athlete doesn't mean they're going to be great at the NFL. I think that is it. So let's get into the prospects that are intriguing me. And the first one here is going to be Josh Downs right here. You can see him. Josh Downs is 5'9", but he stood out as much or more than anybody else at the combine in the on-field drills portion of the combine that I watched. He is short. He is light. Even for his height, he is undersized. And he has below average length arms. However, his athletics are very good, but they're not astounding. Although for his mass, his broad jump and his vertical jump were excellent, which shows explosiveness and raw power, which can obviously help to get off the line quicker, for instance, but it can also help to break strongly and suddenly in and out of his routes. Something that was verified on his scouting report. If you have really good control from your hips on down as a receiver, there's just a lot that you can do. Ultimately, I don't think that Josh would have made this list had I not seen him in the on-field drills, but the boy is impressive, and his production in college proves that he can play. I doubt that he is a good blocker, and things will be all the tougher for him given some of his limitations at the next level for him to succeed, but I think he's going to succeed despite those limitations, and because of those, he probably won't be going in the first round. I'm going to put a strong second-round draft grade on him myself. Let's move on to the next guy in the big and tall club here. Next guys. I have 4 names on this list here: Bryce Ford-Wheaton, Jonathan Mingo, Elijah Higgins, Justin Shorter. And I love these tall, big wide receivers. I'm not going to be showing any clips of them. Each of these guys has their own unique tool set that they are working with. And so I will be looking into each of them just a little bit more than I have so far. But something to point out here is that I would have put Bryce Ford-Wheaton right at the top of this list, I would have pointed him out, been showing clips of him here, except for the fact that I saw him in the on-field drills at the combine, and he did the opposite of impress me. So I just did not, I didn't feel comfortable putting him here. Justin Shorter's another name that stood out in the combine, but he was a mixed bag. Some things look good, some things didn't look so great. But he also projects the worst out of this group. Currently, he's projected to be drafted the latest out of these guys. So I didn't really feel comfortable putting up there either. But regardless, these guys are all exciting prospects that if they make it at the next level, they have the height, the size to potentially be special guys. And for that reason, generally speaking, it's going to be harder and harder the later on in the draft, as we go in the later on in the draft, to let these guys slide more. I think that pure potential is going to get these guys drafted eventually. 5th round later seems to be about the expectation. We'll see if I don't fall in love with one of these guys, but for now, just doesn't seem like that's in the cards this year for these big guys. Although there's going to be maybe one that's right down here that's going to come up towards the end of the video who I ended up being more interested in potentially. Let's move on to the next guy, and that is going to be Cedric Tillman, who is right here. You can see those numbers. Cedric Tillman is a 6'3", and he has a very prototypical build, but he's another guy who is making this list because of the on-field drills at the combine. Himself and Downs were the two that I left knowing I had to absolutely remember their names. He is a touch slow, so that's unfortunate, but there is so much more that goes into the on-field / in-game speed of receivers than their pure 40 speed. Not that a burner isn't great to have, but a lot of very successful receivers aren't the fastest guys on the track. He looked smooth, and he had this striding nature to him that was very natural on the field. I think you should be happy if your team takes him in the 3rd round. Visually, he looked the part to me. Also, I happened to catch the media session at the combine for Cedric Tillman, and I wrote that he seems mature and empathetic. All right, I'm doing my best to make sure I don't cover up any of these guys with my face, but up next, we are going to get to Tre Tucker here, who I'm trying to highlight, do my best job of that. Tre Tucker is 5'9", and just check out that 10-yard split of his. It's absolutely excellent. Not a bad 40 either. Somebody who actually had a better 10-yard split than him, better 40 time than him, is Darius Davis. But unfortunately, this shuttle, combined with the fact that he is, 5'8", 165 pounds, were just concerns for me to the point that I ended up going with Tre Tucker over him. So we will be covering Tre. I just wanted to make sure to get Darius's name in here. I really wish Tre would have done the shuttle and the 3-cone at least, because this is the kind of quickness that one of my favorite prospects from several years ago had, and that guy is Hunter Renfrow. After looking at Tre's scouting report, it looks like Renfrow may not quite be the comp that I was hoping for Tre. In some ways, however, there are some skill sets that Tre has as a returner on special teams that may translate similarly if he can learn to tighten up his short route running, as it seems that he is served better as a vertical threat at this point in his career. Between his potential and what he already has, his already there abilities, I'm going to put a 3rd round draft grade on him. I would prefer Cedric Tillman, but they both bring something entirely different to an offense. He looked pretty darn good in the on-field drills as well. Maybe even just pretty good. I added the darn in there for effect. Now let's move on to two guys who everybody knows about. So we won't play the clips because honestly, I feel like a pretty decent chance, a higher chance at least, that these guys would have copyrights for their clips. So not even going to mess with that. Quentin Johnson here is 6'3", all the way down here. Make sure I'm not blocking that. And just check out that vert, that broad. Those are absolutely amazing. Quentin just didn't participate in enough drills to qualify for a prospect score. He was catching with his hands at the draft. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything there. Yeah. So he was catching with his hands at the draft and just fine, and that seems to be the biggest knock on him as far as, well, it's like the only knock that I seem to ever hear about him is he's a body catcher. As far as the first round guys go, he is my favorite right alongside with this next name. But before that, I did catch the media session that Quentin Johnson had at the Combine, and I wrote that he was playful with the media. And Davante Adams is someone that he looks up to, and he likes the curl route, routes that Davante Adams absolutely specializes in. And if you, even without knowing this, I'm like, he reminds me of Davante Adams. And so the fact that he's trying to emulate Davante purposefully, in addition to just emulating him on the field already, that's one heck of a comp, right? So really like the potential for Quentin Johnson. I understand he's not the perfect wide receiver prospect of, it seems like a lot of classes lately, but at the top, but still very interesting. And then we're going to move on up to Jaxon Smith-Njigba here. Check out that shuttle and that cone. Those are absolutely amazing. And so just a short little while ago, by the way, Jaxon Smith's 6'1", if you were to convert those inches there. We were just talking about a comp that I think might make more sense here, and that's Hunter Renfrow. The fact of the matter is that Jaxon Smith's 3-cone is better than Hunter's, who ran a 6.8 in that drill at his Combine. Both of those numbers, shuttle 3-cone here for Jaxon Smith, are absolutely impressive. Now, you would like to see some bigger hands here, a larger catch radius with those shorter arms, but I have a hard time passing up on very unique, once every few draft types of qualities. And he is a rare, talented, refined route runner that I think any quarterback at the next level in the NFL would absolutely love to have in their slot. I'm giving him a first-round draft grade. I don't know. I don't think that he's some sort of top 10 type quality material here, but also, like, he's unique. You can't just find this guy standing on any darn street corner in any darn city in the U.S. I'm fairly hopeful that the Green Bay Packers will end up taking Quentin Johnson or Jaxon Smith-Njigba with their draft pick this season. I do think that Quentin Johnson makes more sense with our current route. So, like, would I rather Quentin Johnson, Romeo Doubs in the slot, and Christian Watson doing every other thing? He can be in the slot some plays too. Romeo Doubs can go outside. Would I rather that, or would I rather Smith-Njigba basically just rocking the slot on every play, a little bit less flexible of a player, and then having Christian Watson doing his thing and Romeo Doubs almost exclusively on the outside? I think I would rather have Quentin Johnson on the outside with doing whatever you want with the other receivers compared to Jaxon Smith taking up the slot and maybe not being very useful elsewhere. So that's the big issue with Jaxon Smith, but I do think he's going to be so awesome as a slot receiver. I did catch the media session for him as well. He seems polite. He was soft-spoken. He's probably not a vocal leader, so that happens, but he did have a very good sense of humor, and he came off as very honest, so those are two great qualities. Now on to some notable names from the receivers. First up, we have Dante Demas Jr. That stood out to me. Just check out that it's really his arm length there, that catch radius that I find really exciting. Then we have Andre Lascivas down here. Hopefully you can see that. Now you can see it for sure. Look at those athletics. Very solid. Good size there for Andre. Followed up by Jason Brownlee up here. He is another guy with a nice wingspan there for our arm length, for a catch radius. Really solid base like that. Just a knock right there. Then we have Jalen Hyatt, a little bit up here. Another guy who, tests very well at the Combine overall. Exciting there. Nice arm length. A little undersized, a little small. Then we have Dontavian Wicks, is it? Wicks. Sorry. Dontavian Wicks, somebody who I know has fallen a lot in drafts. There he is. Another guy a lot more solid than not going on there in the testing. Then we have Marvin Mims Jr. Very good 40 time, solid other traits here. Just a little bit of a smaller guy, but that's okay to have. Then we have Xavier Hutchinson. Just, I don't know. He might have just made the list because I'm aware of his name, but something stood out enough here that I wanted to put him on the list. But then I told you we would get to Matt Landers, who is at 22 over here. Right up there at the top of the screen, Matt Landers, somebody who I almost overlooked. That's why he's the last on this list. But I definitely want to add him in here into the players that I want to be looking more into for sure. And there are other guys that are not on this list that I'm very aware of, or we'll be checking out more, whatever the case. If you have any names that I didn't bring up, or if you have anything to say about the guys that I've already talked about, please feel free to drop those in the comments. We're just going to finish this up with 2 last names from the media session that these guys didn't end up making it elsewhere. Well, not true. Rashee Rice, the first name, does make it elsewhere. Yeah, Rashee Rice, as I said, he would have made it onto the notable names list there, and I do think that he looked pretty good at the Combine as well. However, I did have some notes for him from the media interview that I want to talk about. So I wrote that Rashee Rice seems comfortable and confident with making the move up to the next level in the NFL. And so I thought that was, a good quality. He doesn't seem to be intimidated by this next step. He just seems to be ready for it. And he also said that he likes to lead by example and that he is willing to block. And those are 2 qualities that I love. And when you show a willingness to block, I think oftentimes those are the guys who like to lead by example. So I believe his words there. And so I find Rashee Rice to be a very interesting prospect this season. Then we have one who may not be so interesting, Luke Schoonmaker, who I wrote was easygoing and a bit dull. So, I mean, I'm sorry, Luke. I'm sure you're easygoing. I actually absolutely love that quality. But, a bit dull. And if I recall correctly, he might have stood out in the wrong ways in the on-field drills a couple of times, too. That's the last name you see on the back of jersey, and it catches your eye, though. So maybe it wasn't any more than some other guys. I don't know. Thank you very much for watching this video through, and I will be back with you for with the tight end position tomorrow night. So thank you very much. Have fun. Bye. Love life. I gotta end this.